God must be really angry at that criminal, that God has stricken him, afflicted, and punished him. But he was pierced for our transgressions and crushed for our iniquities. So the conclusion is, no, it's not God punishing him. It's the iniquities and the transgressions that are being put on him that are crushing him. You go on, it says, the punishment that brought us peace was on him. The word punishment there is not punishment. The Septuagint says the suffering that brought us peace was on him. It's a big difference between those, because punishment implies a punisher, whereas suffering is suffering. Two different concepts. So the suffering that brought us peace was on him. By his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned our own way. The Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. That would be the atonement part of the story. Not that God has beat him to death out of wrath and anger and punishment, but the suffering, the iniquity, the transgression, all of that was laid onto Jesus as the atonement lamb. That's different, but it gets changed into punishment, which implies a punisher. But it's not punishment here. We'll jump down because there's a lot here, but we have in verse 8, by oppression and judgment he was taken away, yet who of his generation protested? For he was cut off from the land of the living. And then this is a line that we'll look at right here. For the transgression of my people he was punished. We have that punishment word showing up again. And what you have going on here, two different words that have to be changed if you're going to go back to an accurate translation. It says, for the transgression of my people he was punished. For and punished are both inaccurate. For has to do with the substitution, meaning you should have been punished, but he stepped in and was punished for you. That's the substitution. What it actually says in the Septuagint here, instead of the word for, is the word by. B-Y. By the transgression of my people. And then it doesn't say punished either. It actually says plagued. Plagued. Like with a disease. So to say this correctly, by the transgression of my people he was plagued. So the plague was, he was this perfect, healthy, sinless lamb, and it was like the disease of Israel is being put on him. By the transgression he was plagued. It's put on him from the outside like that. And then verse 10, yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. Now, that sounds very Calvin. That sounds very penal substitution. It's the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. Doesn't get much more Calvin than that right there. That verse right there. But I'll have to turn it this way because the whole sentence is wrong and it's written in my margin. Here's what it says. This is what the Septuagint says. It's so different. The Lord also is pleased to purge him from his wound. So, 2 verses earlier, it's talking about he has this disease that's put on him, a plague. And then here in verse 10, the Lord also is pleased to purge him from his wound. Or plague would be another word instead of wound. So the Lord is also pleased to purge him from his wound. So sin in this passage is pictured as a disease that humanity has, and the atonement lamb, Jesus, the suffering servant, steps in and takes the disease on, and he carries our sin, our burdens, our sorrow, all of it like a plague. He carries it to the cross. And by him dying and carrying it, he takes it into the grave, and he comes out and leaves all of that in the grave, comes out without it and releases a new creation and a new race out of a second Adam, that now we're all impacted by that. It's a very different picture when you translate it without manipulation. Anybody could do this study. Go look up the Septuagint, the LXX version. Look it up online. Everything I just showed you, you can do it yourself. You can read it